Marry him, the stepfather ordered, forcing Lucia's wheelchair into the arms of the chained slave. There was no introduction, no ceremony, just command. His voice cracked with impatience as if he was trying to get rid of trash, not hand over a human being. She belongs to him now. Raphael didn't react. He was forced forward by two guards, shackles grinding against his wrists. His arms hung heavy from years of forced labor, shoulders marked by rope burns that hadn't healed. His presence, tall and strong, was meant to intimidate, meant to terrify Lucia instead. She looked at the people around him. The stepmother tightened her grip around Lucia's trembling fingers. "Hold his hand," she instructed. "You are his wife. You obey whatever he demands. That is your only duty." Lucia whispered, "I don't want—" The stepmother slapped her hand down firmly on Raphael's palm, silencing her. Lucia's small fingers looked fragile against his calloused grip, but Raphael didn't close his hand. He kept it open, refusing to curl his fingers around hers. He stood motionless, breathing slowly, staring at the step-parents as if asking why they needed him for this. The stepfather raised Raphael's wrist and shoved it toward Lucia's arm. "Your strength is ours. If she disobeys, you bend her will. You punish her in our place. This marriage gives you command." His eyes hardened. "And gives us control?" Lucia's breathing grew uneven. "Please, don't let them hurt me through you." Raphael's head tilted slightly. He didn't speak. He hadn't been allowed to speak freely in years. But the way his jaw tightened, the way he refused to grip her hand, made his message clear. "I am not your weapon." The stepmother leaned close enough for Raphael to smell her perfume of stale roses and vinegar. "You will treat her as we command. A wife is property, and property obeys." Lucia recoiled from the words as if slapped. She wasn't a bride. She wasn't a person being celebrated. She was being delivered, traded, used. The stepfather forced a broken chain cuff around Raphael's wrist and looped the end around the back of Lucia's wheelchair. "You are bound to her now, wherever she goes. You follow. Whatever she does, you answer for it." Raphael looked down at the metal, locking his fate to hers. It wasn't a symbol of love. It was a leash, a control device, a way to use him through her, a way to punish her through him. Lucia lowered her head. "They think I'm weak. They expect you to break me." Raphael didn't respond, didn't step away, didn't resist. But he didn't play along either. His silence, heavy and unreadable, made the stepfather uncomfortable enough to clear his throat. "Take your wife," he commanded. Raphael didn't move his arms. Instead, he lifted the wheelchair ever so slightly, just enough to prevent Lucia from being tipped over by the force of the chain. He did nothing more. No embrace, no obedience, no forced compliance. The stepmother frowned. "Is he refusing?" The stepfather glared. "He'll learn. They always learn." Lucia turned her eyes toward Raphael, tears gathering but not falling. She whispered softly, barely audible, "You don't have to hurt me to survive." Raphael lowered the wheelchair gently onto steady ground. He still didn't hold her hand. He wasn't given a bride. He was given someone to break, but his refusal to touch her became their first act of rebellion. The stepfather tossed a long cane toward Raphael's feet. It landed with a sharp crack. "Pick it up," he commanded. "You will keep her in line." Lucia flinched at the sound, shrinking back into her wheelchair. She lifted her hands defensively, though no one had touched her yet. The stepmother stood behind her, gripping the chair's handles with stiff fingers, pushing Lucia's back against it as if pinning her in place. "Go on," she said to Raphael. "Show her who she belongs to now." Raphael stared at the cane. It lay on the floor like a command waiting to be obeyed. His wrists were heavy with chains, the metal tugging when he bent slightly to look at it. He didn't reach for it. He didn't bow to their expectation. His breathing steadied, slow and unbroken. The stepfather's jaw tightened. "She doesn't eat. She doesn't move. She doesn't listen unless she's frightened. We're giving you permission to do what we cannot." Lucia whispered, "They starve me if I speak. They hit me if I cry. See? the stepmother snapped. A useless mouth. Fix it. Silence her properly. Raphael's eyes flicked to Lucia. She stared back at him, terrified not of him, but of what he might be forced to become. Her breathing sped, and she shook her head slowly. Please, don't let them use you to hurt me. The stepfather grew irritated. Enough whispering. This is not a request. This is your role. A husband disciplines his wife. Pick up the cane. The guard stepped closer, hands on Raphael's shoulders, forcing him toward the weapon. Their grip made his chains clatter against the floor. Raphael's fingers curled not around the cane, but into fists. For a moment, it looked as if he might strike someone. The guard stepped back, uncertain. He slowly reached down, but instead of grabbing the middle of the cane like a weapon, he grasped the thin tip and lifted it gently, like something he didn't want to harm. His grip was delicate, almost respectful, a direct insult to their cruelty. Good, the stepmother said. Now teach her obedience. Raphael didn't raise the cane. Instead, he turned it in his hand, holding it horizontally as if inspecting its length. Then, without hesitation, he lowered it to the ground again. The wood tapped gently against the floor, barely audible, but deliberate. Lucia exhaled sharply. Relief shuddering through her shoulders, the stepfather lunged toward Raphael, face flushed with rage. You follow orders? He lifted his hand to strike Raphael, but Raphael made an unexpected move. He lowered his head slightly, not in submission, but positioning himself between Lucia and the blow. The strike stopped mid-air. The stepfather's hand hovered, unsure where to land now. Raphael's presence blocked the path. His towering frame prevented the blow from reaching Lucia. It was an act of defiance, without violence protection, without confrontation. The stepmother hissed under her breath. You were meant to break her spirit. Instead, you hide her. Raphael rose slowly, still silent. He took one step backward, positioning himself behind Lucia's wheelchair. His chains dragged noisily, emphasizing the shift. He was chained to her. Yet he chose to shield her. Lucia's fingers trembled, then curled lightly around the wheel nearest him. Almost as if to stay connected to the first person who hadn't hurt her, the stepfather pointed a shaking finger. Next time you will strike harder. Raphael didn't look at him. He didn't nod. He didn't protest, but the cane lay untouched on the floor, ignored, powerless. Their weapon refused to be used, and now they feared who he might choose to protect. They yanked Raphael's chain and dragged him out into the courtyard before he had time to stand on his own. The guards shoved heavy crates toward him filled with grain, stone, whatever they could find to test his strength. Lucia was wheeled beside him, as if she were a witness to his obedience. Lift, the stepfather ordered. If you don't, she suffers. He said it casually, as if it were a simple fact, not a threat. Raphael's eyes narrowed. The guards didn't wait for his response. They forced his hands around the crate, pushing until the wooden edges cut into his palms. Lucia whispered from her chair, "Don't hurt yourself for me." He didn't answer. His silence wasn't defiance, it was concentration. Choosing who to obey, Raphael lifted the crate, but not the way they expected. Instead of hoisting it aggressively or proving his strength to impress them, he raised it slowly, controlled, without aggression. The wood creaked under the weight, yet he handled it with the care of someone protecting something fragile. The stepmother frowned. He's not showing power. He's playing gentle. Force him. The stepfather barked. The guard shoved him again, but Raphael stepped aside just enough to keep balance. He didn't retaliate, didn't threaten. He simply moved with exact precision, each shift of his weight purposeful. Lucia watched him, her hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair. She noticed something the others didn't. Raphael wasn't lifting the crate to obey. He was shielding her. The heavy load, if dropped, would have crushed her legs. His careful movements protected her without making it obvious. The stepfather stomped toward him. Faster! Raphael lowered the crate, setting it down without a sound. He didn't strain. He didn't wince. He simply let go and waited. The stepmother pointed at another crate. That one. Show her what happens if she resists. Lucia straightened her posture. I am not resisting. I am watching. Her voice was small but sharp. The stepmother shot her a glare. You will learn obedience. Either from him or at his expense. Raphael glared at the cane still lying nearby, untouched. He bent down not for the cane but to lift the second crate. Again, slowly, deliberately. His restraint infuriated them. He wasn't demonstrating power. He was neutralizing it. One guard muttered, "He's too careful." The stepfather's face twisted in realization. He knows she suffer if he fails. He's protecting her to protect himself. Raphael paused mid-lift. He raised his eyes, not disagreeing, not agreeing, just letting the truth sit between them. He could survive anything they threw at him, but she couldn't, and that made her the key. Lucia leaned forward slightly. You don't have to break for them. You just have to not break me. Raphael's grip tightened not on the crate, but on his resolve. He lifted the crate again, higher this time, only to set it down gently behind Lucia's wheelchair. As if building a wall between her and the step-parents, the stepmother's voice broke. He's using his strength to protect her. The stepfather pointed at Raphael like a threat made flesh. Then we will make protection a problem. Raphael's chest rose once, steady. His silence said what words could not. If you make her a weapon, I will turn it against you, Lucia whispered, for his ears alone. Thank you. Raphael didn't nod, didn't look at her. But he reached behind her chair to adjust the crate slightly, making sure it couldn't tip over. It wasn't a gesture of obedience. It was defense. They tried to make him a weapon, and he learned how to guard instead. The stepmother shoved a bowl into Raphael's hands so suddenly that some of the food splattered onto his knuckles. Make her eat, she growled. She refuses to take a single bite unless someone forces her. Lucia sat rigidly in her wheelchair, lips pressed shut. Her fingers gripped the arms of the chair with desperate stubbornness, though her wrists were bony with exhaustion. Her stepfather leaned over her like a judge waiting to witness punishment. If she won't obey us, he said quietly, then you will feed her by force. Raphael glanced at the bowl. It wasn't food, not really. It was scraps, overcooked and cold, the kind of meal meant to humiliate. He raised the spoon but did not speak. His silence filled the room like something heavy and suffocating, Lucia whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. They starve me when they're angry. Not because they want me weak, but because they want me quiet. The stepmother snapped at her. Speak again and we'll starve him too. Raphael's grip tightened around the spoon. Not because he planned to use it as a weapon, because it was the only thing he could use to protect her without striking back. He brought the spoon toward her slowly. Lucia's eyes widened, not in fear of him, but in disappointment. She turned her face away. I don't want food they use as punishment, she whispered. I don't want to survive just to obey them. Raphael paused. The stepfather stepped closer. Make her swallow it. If she resists, you'll learn a lesson you won't forget. Raphael turned the spoon over. The food slid off and splattered on the floor. It was not defiance, it was precision. He then dipped the spoon back into the bowl, scooping a smaller amount. Something human-sized, not forceful, not humiliating. He didn't shove it toward her mouth. He held it just inches away and waited. Lucia blinked. She looked from the spoon to the stepmother's angry face, then back to Raphael. You're not making me eat, she whispered, confused. You're letting me choose? Raphael remained still, silent, offering food, not demanding obedience. Lucia reached up with trembling fingers and slowly took the spoon from him. Her hand shook as she brought it to her mouth, swallowing the bite. It wasn't acceptance of their rule, it was survival on her own terms. The stepfather's jaw clenched. You were supposed to force her. By serving her gently, the stepmother spat, you make her think she has a choice. Lucia ate the next bite herself. The sound of the spoon scraping the bowl might as well have been a war drum. The stepmother lunged forward to snatch the bowl away, but Raphael stepped into her path, not violently, just firmly. Blocking the motion with his body, he didn't touch her. He didn't shove, he simply stood. The stepfather grabbed Raphael's arm to pull him away. Raphael didn't resist, but he didn't move either. His feet stayed planted. His stance was immovable. Lucia swallowed another bite, louder this time. Each swallow was an act of rebellion. You see? She said softly but with a trembling strength. I'm not eating because you command it. I'm eating because he won't let you take everything from me. The stepmother backed away. Shaken as if she'd heard a scream instead of a whisper, Raphael took the empty bowl, placed it gently on the table, and returned behind Lucia's chair, the place he had chosen, not as a weapon, not as her owner, as her shield. They ordered him to control her body, and he protected her soul instead. The afternoon chores ended with orders barked, chains dragged, and doors slammed. Raphael was ordered to stay beside Lucia at all times, even when she was sent to her room. The stepmother shoved her wheelchair forward, but the wheels snagged on a torn rug, forcing her to jerk it violently. Lucia winced. Raphael stepped closer, instinctively steadying the chair before her body could jolt again. Don't touch her unless told, the stepmother hissed, but he already had. And that small, automatic act of care burned in her eyes. She shoved the door open and left them inside together. Lucia waited a moment before breathing normally again. Then, with shaky fingers, she reached beneath her blanket and pulled out small pieces of cloth scraps of fabric stitched unevenly. Raphael frowned slightly, curious. I sew when they punish me, she whispered. It keeps my hands from shaking when they lock me in here. She didn't look at him while she spoke. Her words were almost afraid to exist. She laid a scrap gently across her lap. It carried faint stains, brownish, faded, like bruises turned to thread. Raphael carefully took one piece. His calloused thumb brushed over a frayed corner, torn, not cut, not worn down with time. Ripped. He traced the stitching tight, cramped, desperate. This wasn't art. This was survival. Lucia noticed his focus. You see it, she murmured. You see what the damage really is. Raphael didn't nod, didn't speak, but he lifted a second scrap. This one held a tiny embroidered flower, stitched crookily but determined. A small attempt at something gentle, born from pain. I tried to make something beautiful out of what they break, she said. But the fabric tears too easily. I keep sewing over it, but the rips remain under the thread. Raphael set the cloth down and picked up another 3 layers, thick, tough, with repeated stitches. She had reinforced it over and over. The seams were messy, but strong, stronger than the original fabric. He looked directly at her now. You understand, Lucia whispered, eyes glistening. I'm not stubborn because I enjoy defiance. I'm stubborn because I refuse to fall apart for them. Her voice wavered. They thought giving me to you would make me break. They thought your strength would finish what their cruelty began. She reached toward his wrist, touching where the chain cut into his skin. But you don't break things, you carry them. Raphael inhaled once, slow and steady. The room felt tighter, heavier, not from sadness, but from a new truth made visible. She wasn't weak. She was wounded, and yet still standing in her own way. Her will was a patchwork, ragged but stubborn. He looked at the cloth again. Without a word, he tore a strip from his own sleeve and handed it to her. It wasn't soft or pretty or meant for sewing, but it was strong. Lucia stared at it, stunned. No needle, no thread, she whispered. Confused, Raphael wrapped the fabric gently around her wrist, tying it tight, not like a restraint, but like a bandage, a guard protecting thin skin from bruises. Her breath broke into a tiny laugh, small, shaken, but real. You're helping me mend without sewing. He stepped back, letting her look at the band on her wrist. The scrap she'd once used to hide pain was replaced with something that protected it. He realized she wasn't meant to be controlled or pitied. She was meant to be protected, reinforced, and finally allowed to heal. The door burst open without warning. Lucia didn't have time to hide the cloth Raphael had given her. The stepfather strode in first, his jaw stiff, eyes locked on her wrist. The stepmother followed, carrying a leather strap she twisted between her fingers like a promise. What is this? She demanded, reaching to yank the cloth away. Lucia clutched her wrist against her chest, but the stepmother grabbed her arm roughly. We said you don't get gifts. You don't get comfort, you obey. Lucia winced. It's just fabric. It's defiance. the stepfather snapped. He raised his hand, ready to strike her. His temper always arrived without warning, like a door slamming shut. He aimed to hit her across the face. Before the blow fell, Raphael moved. It didn't look forceful, it wasn't fast or aggressive. He simply stepped between them and Lucia's chair, his body forming a wall. The stepfather's hand collided with Raphael's back, not her cheek. The sound echoed like a mistake. The stepfather pulled his hand back, stunned. "You don't protect her. You punish her. That was the agreement." Raphael said nothing. He didn't step aside. He didn't push back. He simply remained there, immovable as a stone at the doorway of a temple. The stepmother hissed, "You are bound to serve our commands." Raphael lifted Lucia's wheelchair handle with one massive hand. The gesture was not a threat, it was a placement. He rolled her slightly back behind him, shielding her fully. No words. No fight, just position chosen and powerful. Lucia's breath caught. "He's protecting me." The stepfather scoffed loudly, masking his unease. "He isn't protecting you. He's saving himself. If you're harmed, he suffers punishment too. Then why step in front of a blow?" Lucia asked softly, eyes never leaving Raphael. The stepmother sneered. "Because he's too stupid to know the difference." Raphael lifted his head slowly. His gaze met hers. There was intelligence there, unspoken and sharp. He wasn't ignorant. He was deliberate. The stepfather grabbed Raphael's arm to drag him away. Raphael didn't pull, didn't struggle, but he didn't move either. His feet remained fixed. His grip on the wheelchair tightened just enough that Lucia's wheels wouldn't budge. The leather strap dropped from the stepmother's hand, landing limp on the floor. She had intended to use it, but the moment had passed. They couldn't strike without hitting Raphael. And striking him now felt like attacking something unpredictable. "You think protecting her makes you powerful?" The stepfather said through clenched teeth. "Protection is weakness." Her weakness. Lucia spoke before Raphael could respond even silently. "No, protection means someone sees worth where others see control." The stepmother's face flushed. "Worth? She is nothing without us. You both are." Raphael turned slightly, positioning himself closer to Lucia. His chain rattled, not like bondage, but like a warning. They couldn't remove him without removing her. They couldn't punish her without striking him. They couldn't break him without risking the only tool they thought they controlled. The stepfather backed away first, not wanting to reveal his fear. "If he won't obey," he grumbled, "then we'll teach him the cost of loyalty." Raphael said nothing. His silence felt like a condemnation. Lucia looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not just protecting me, you're choosing me over them." He didn't nod, he didn't need to. He remained between her and danger, and the step-parents couldn't breach the barrier he had become. They chained him to control her, and now they were trapped behind the wall he became. The stepfather dragged Raphael into the study by the chain connected to Lucia's wheelchair, forcing both of them to follow. The room was crowded with documents, ledgers, ink pots, and a lawyer seated nervously at a desk. The stepmother stood nearby clutching a folded legal sheet, its wax seal freshly broken. "Sit," she ordered Lucia, shoving her chair into place before the desk. She slapped the document down in front of her. "Sign it." Lucia stared at the page. Her eyes scanned the words, but her voice cracked when she managed to speak. "It claims I harmed myself. It accuses me of disobedience, of instability." The lawyer cleared his throat. "It legally places all responsibility for her behavior onto her husband." He nodded toward Raphael. "If she misbehaves, it would be his failure." The stepfather snatched a pen from the desk and thrust it into Raphael's hand. "Sign it. You take responsibility for controlling her. If she steps out of line, you suffer. If she refuses to obey, you lose food, rest, even breath." Lucia gasped. "He shouldn't be chained to my punishment." The stepmother turned sharply to her. "Silence. You are chained to his life and he to your obedience. That's what marriage is." Raphael held the pen in his fist. His eyes moved slowly from the paper to the ink to Lucia. Her lips trembled. "Don't sign. Don't make yourself another instrument they own." The stepfather stepped closer. "What choice do you have? You either break her for us, or we break both of you. Sign." Raphael looked down at his hands scarred from labor, forced to lift, carry, strike when commanded. Hands they believed could be trained like an animal's. He slowly lifted the pen as if considering the command. Lucia shut her eyes, bracing for betrayal. Then Raphael did something none of them expected. He snapped the pen in two. Ink burst across the parchment, splattering like spilled truth. The contract lay defaced, stained beyond repair. The lawyer recoiled as the ink seeped into legal words, turning their authority into chaos. The stepmother lunged forward. "That paper was our control." Lucia's eyes widened. "You can't rewrite what was exposed." The stepfather glared at Raphael. "Do you realize what you've done?" Raphael turned to Lucia. Gently he reached out, not to grab her, not to claim her, but to wipe a droplet of ink from her cheek with his thumb. A quiet gesture, soft and deliberate, as though he were washing away the accusation they tried to pin on her. The lawyer stammered, This refusal is a legal breach. It implies coercion, if anyone investigates." "Enough!" The stepfather snapped, but his voice lacked force now. He had lost authority the moment Raphael refused to do his bidding. The stepmother paced like a trapped animal. "If you will not control her, then we will make your silence worthless. We will destroy you both." Raphael returned to his stance behind Lucia's chair, posture unyielding. The stepfather stepped toward him, but Raphael's presence stopped him cold. Not through violence, through certainty. Lucia pressed a hand to her chest, breath shallow. He didn't speak, but he said everything. The lawyer backed away, clearly uneasy. He gathered the ink-splattered documents with trembling hands, aware that what had happened was irreversible. The step-parents now faced a truth they could not control or rewrite. Their strongest weapon refused to obey. His silence signed a stronger contract than any document could, one of protection, not possession. The guards stormed in with iron restraints, rattling them like weapons. The stepfather pointed directly at Raphael. "Take him, he's getting bold. Separate him from the girl before he becomes a problem neither of us can control." One guard reached for the chain attached to Lucia's wheelchair. Raphael stepped back, placing the chair firmly behind him. The guard tugged harder. Raphael didn't let go. His grip tightened around the metal ring, fingers curling slowly until his knuckles turned stark white beneath the grime. "Let go," the guard ordered. Raphael didn't move. The stepmother shoved forward, face contorted with panic more than rage. "Break them apart!" He's confusing strength with authority. Another guard pulled at Raphael's wrist reins, trying to drag him forward. The chain scraped against the floor, but Raphael's body remained anchored. His weight wasn't brute resistance, it was control, measured, calculated. He wasn't fighting to escape. He was refusing to leave her. Lucia clutched the armrest of her wheelchair. "Don't hurt him. He's done nothing wrong." The stepfather silenced her with a raised hand. "He refuses to follow commands." "That is wrong enough." Raphael's jaw clenched. The guards tugged again, harder. Metal squealed, clamps strained. For the first time, one link of the chain didn't just stretch, it warped. A thin crack appeared along the metal. The guards froze. The stepmother stumbled back, clutching her chest. "He'll break free. If he breaks free, we lose everything." Lucia's eyes widened. She wasn't afraid of Raphael breaking the chain. She was afraid of what freedom would cost them both. "Raphael, stop. They'll punish you if you fight them." Raphael turned his head a fraction toward her voice. His grip didn't loosen, but his eyes softened. In that small shift, she understood he wasn't fighting to escape. He was fighting to stay with her. The stepfather barked new orders nervously. "Don't pull him away from the girl. Force her away from him." The guards moved toward Lucia now, grabbing her chair handles. Raphael's arm shot out, slamming onto the wheel. They pushed, and his hand dragged across the spoke, metal grinding against his skin. Not enough to injure, but enough to show the guards how far he would go without lifting a fist. Lucia cried out, "Stop! You'll hurt him!" The guards hesitated. If they injured Raphael through her, she became the witness, the proof of their abuse. One guard muttered, "If she sees, she talk." "She can't walk," the stepmother snapped. "She doesn't speak to anyone who matters." Raphael's shoulders rose and fell once, a breath of quiet fury. He leaned forward, planting his body over Lucia's chair like a barricade. The chain pulled taut again. The crack widened. A single metal thread snapped and fell with a sharp ping against the floor. The room fell silent. The stepfather whispered, "If he keeps this up, we can't control him. We can't use him." Lucia placed her hand against Raphael's back, not to stop him, but to tell him she understood. He wasn't trying to break chains. He was proving they no longer held power. The guards backed away, unsure whether removing him might unleash something bigger. The step-parents stood frozen, confronted by the possibility that their greatest tool might choose his own purpose. Raphael released the chain, slowly. His hand dropped with calm finality, as though he had already won something they could not see. Lucia whispered to the guards, but her words were meant for the step-parents. "You wanted him to crush me. Now you fear he might protect me." They finally realized something terrifying. A chained protector is more dangerous than a free enemy. They sat Lucia at the broad table, pushing her wheelchair forward until her knees touched the wood. A blank sheet of paper was slapped down in front of her. Ink, quill, and a heavy stamp were placed beside it like instruments of surgery. "You will sign," the stepmother commanded. "You will confess," the stepfather added. Lucia stared at the empty page. Her fingers trembled not from fear, but from exhaustion. She hadn't eaten enough. She hadn't slept. The chain at Raphael's wrist clinked softly behind her as he was forced to stand at her back like a silent guard, watching every second. "Write that the servant harmed you," the stepfather ordered. "Write that he forced you to obey." Lucia's eyes widened. "That's a lie." The stepmother leaned down, speaking through clenched teeth. "Truth is whatever the law reads on paper. Your suffering means nothing unless we declare that he caused it." Raphael's head turned slowly toward them, not violently, not threatening, simply aware. His silence felt heavier than any protest could. The lawyer, seated opposite, nodded mechanically. "If she writes it, the burden becomes his. The consequences follow him. And the guardians remain innocent," Lucia's voice cracked. "You won't even have to punish him yourselves. The law will do it." The stepfather smiled thinly. "As it should. She is a child in need of discipline. And our servant husband will take the blame." Raphael remained still, but his breathing grew deeper. Anyone perceptive would have known he heard each word like a stone being stacked on top of his patience. Lucia reached for the quill. The step-parents smirked. The lawyer prepared his stamp. But instead of writing words, Lucia held out her hand to Raphael. Confused, he stepped closer. She dipped his finger into the ink. Raphael didn't pull away. He didn't question her. Then, guiding his hand with hers, she pressed his ink-covered fingertip onto the center of the page slowly, firmly creating one single, straight vertical line. A line without letters. No confession, no lie, just a mark. The lawyer blinked. "What is this supposed to be?" Lucia pushed the paper slightly toward the lawyer. "It proves I was forced to write something." "But I refused." The stepmother lunged forward. "That is not a signature." "No," Lucia whispered. "It's proof of coercion." The stepfather slammed his fist on the table. "You insolent girl!" "You think a line protects him?" The lawyer's face paled. "Actually, that line is dangerous. It shows intent to force. It could be evidence against you both." The room froze. The step-parents stood rigid, suddenly aware they had no leverage over that blank, marked paper. They could not claim her statement. They could not twist it. They could not destroy it without appearing guilty. Lucia looked at Raphael. "You protected me, now let my mark protect you?" Raphael stared at the single black line. It was nothing and everything, a wall, a refusal, a wound that didn't bleed. The stepfather hissed, "You think a child's scribble changes our control?" Raphael took the paper in his hand, not ripping it, not hiding it, simply holding it like proof. Unbreakable. He walked past the stepfather without waiting for permission. Past the stepmother, who shrank back as though struck. Past the lawyer, who stayed silent, afraid to interfere. He folded the page only once, protecting the line within it like something sacred, and tucked it into his shirt. Lucia whispered, "Now it's safe with him." With one silent stroke, she rewrote "Who held their fate no words needed." The step-parents waited in the grand hall, faces tight with expectation. The final letter arrived on the desk, sealed and stamped, bearing the outcome they had long sought to control. Raphael and Lucia were brought forward, chains still clinking faintly as if echoing past obedience, but their demeanor had changed. No longer fearful, no longer broken. The lawyer stepped forward first, voice firm. By the decree of oversight, custody of the girl is removed from these guardians. Investigation of estate and actions begins immediately. Any attempt to control her further will be noted and penalized. The stepmother's face drained of color. This cannot be, she shrieked. We dictated her life. She belonged to us. Lucia's eyes met Raphael's. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply stepped slightly in front of her, as he had learned to do, positioning himself like an unyielding shield. His silence radiated the truth. The step-parents' commands no longer had power. The stepfather sputtered, slamming his fists onto the desk. If she is free, then what of my authority, my family, my estate? The lawyer looked down at him coldly. Authority is meaningless when it is enforced through fear and cruelty. The law recognizes the actions you forced upon the girl and her protector. Raphael shifted, subtly tilting his shoulders forward, placing himself between the step-parents and Lucia's wheelchair. The chains clinked softly, a faint, resonant sound marking their presence, but now the chains symbolized nothing oppressive. They were relics of control that no longer had sway. The stepmother lunged toward Raphael, a final desperate attempt to reclaim dominance. His stillness was immovable. She faltered mid-step, eyes wide with realization. She had nothing to force him to do. His strength had always belonged to her only as a tool. Now it belonged to truth and protection. Lucia's hands, trembling slightly, reached toward Raphael's wrist, but not to tug at chains or plead. She touched the scars, the iron-burned skin, and pressed gently. Her whisper carried louder than the step-parents' anger. They cannot touch us anymore. The stepfather's voice cracked. You defied me. You used him to shield yourself, but chains could have stopped him. Raphael shifted his weight, the movement subtle but intentional. One link of his wrist chain twisted under his control, bending without breaking, and the sound reverberated through the hall like a bell tolling. The step-parents froze. They understood immediately. Their power had already been broken, even in the presence of iron. Lucia's lips moved for the first time in months. A single, clear, deliberate word. Free. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a plea. It was the acknowledgement of truth. Raphael's silence amplified the word. The step-parents felt it as a hammer striking their authority. The lawyer gathered the final documents. The estate and guardianship will be monitored. Any attempt at coercion will be voided. You will no longer enforce fear over the girl, nor the protector who safeguards her. The stepmother's hands trembled. She grasped at the desk for something, anything, but found emptiness. The stepfather swiveled toward her, face pale. We have nothing. Raphael stepped closer to Lucia, chains clinking softly, but his hand remained free to shield her if necessary. The step-parents realized that their dominance was irrelevant. The power they had built on fear, coercion, and control had evaporated silently, irreversibly. Lucia leaned slightly toward Raphael. We don't need to fight them, she whispered. They lose themselves when they have no one to command. He gave a subtle nod. No other action was necessary. Silence, patience, and protection had dismantled a lifetime of cruelty. The chains that once bound him symbolically now rested as reminders of victory, not imprisonment. Their empire of fear collapsed, not by force, but by the steadfast silence and protection of the one they tried to break.